The rain pounded mercilessly against the windshield as Marcus Washington squinted through the blur, his wipers fighting a losing battle against the downpour. He was exhausted after picking up his daughter Zoe from school and dropping her at his mother's place for the evening. At 38, the lines around his eyes had deepened since becoming a single father 3 years ago when his wife left him for another man. That was when he spotted the police cruiser on the side of the highway just outside of Charlotte, hazard lights blinking rhythmically through the rain. A female officer stood beside it with the hood up, completely drenched as she peered at the engine. Most drivers would have passed by without a second thought. It was not their problem, especially in weather like this. But that was not who Marcus was. He pulled his truck onto the shoulder about 20 feet behind the police cruiser. The female officer was hunched over the engine, her uniform soaked through. As Marcus approached, umbrella in hand, he called out, "Need some help, officer?" When she turned around, time seemed to stop. The umbrella nearly slipped from Marcus's grasp as he stared into a face he had not seen in almost 10 years. "Keisha?" The name escaped his lips as barely a whisper. The officer's professional demeanor faltered for just a moment. Her eyes widened with recognition, then disbelief. "Marcus Washington?" she asked, water streaming down her face, making it impossible to tell if there might be tears mixed in. "Is that really you?" Keisha Williams had been his college sweetheart, his fiancée, the woman who had left him just weeks before their wedding, claiming she was not ready for commitment. The breakup had devastated him, leaving wounds that took years to heal. "What are you doing here?" Marcus asked, automatically moving closer to shield her from the rain. "Last I heard, you were in Atlanta." Keisha's laugh held a note of irony. "I moved back about 2 years ago, joined the force here in Charlotte after the academy." She gestured to her cruiser. "And now I'm stuck in this monsoon with a dead battery." Marcus's construction worker instincts kicked in as he assessed the situation. "Let me take a look. I've got jumper cables in my truck." As Marcus worked to revive her vehicle, they exchanged abbreviated versions of their life stories. Keisha had moved to Atlanta, pursuing a modeling career that never quite took off. After a series of disappointments and unfulfilled promises from agencies that seemed more interested in taking her money than advancing her career, she had found purpose in law enforcement and returned to her hometown. The decision to become a police officer had surprised everyone who knew her, but it felt right in a way that modeling never had. Marcus told her about his marriage to Tanya, his 8-year-old daughter Zoe, and the divorce that had left him a single father. He spoke about the pain of discovering that his wife had been having an affair for months before she finally left, about the struggle to explain to his little girl why mommy was not coming home anymore, and about the slow process of rebuilding a life from the ashes of betrayal. "I'm sorry things didn't work out for you," Keisha said, her voice soft with genuine empathy. "It was for the best," he replied, connecting the jumper cables. "Zoe is the best thing that ever happened to me. She's my whole world." The cruiser's engine roared to life, bringing a smile to Keisha's face. "You always were good with your hands," she said, then blushed slightly at the unintended implication. Marcus felt a strange mix of emotions, old hurt, new curiosity, and something else he could not quite name. "Just glad I could help." What should have been a brief roadside encounter turned into an exchange of phone numbers. "For emergencies," Keisha had said with a small smile. Neither of them truly believed that. 3 days later, Marcus's phone rang while he was helping Zoe with her homework at their kitchen table in the Eastover neighborhood of Charlotte. The caller ID showed Keisha's name, and his heart did a strange little jump. "Officer Williams," he answered teasingly. "Is this an emergency?" Her laugh came through the line, bright and familiar, reminding him of lazy Sunday afternoons at North Carolina A&T, when they would sit under the trees on campus, talking about their dreams and the future they planned to build together. "Actually, it's more of a thank you." I was wondering if you might like to grab coffee sometime. My treat, for saving me from drowning in that storm. Marcus hesitated. Dating had not been on his radar since the divorce. The thought of opening himself up to someone who had hurt him before made him nervous. He had spent 3 years building walls around his heart, protecting himself and his daughter from the possibility of more pain. It's just coffee, Marcus, Keisha added gently, sensing his hesitation. No pressure. I would just like to catch up properly. Something in her voice, the understanding, the patience, made him say yes. That Saturday, they met at a small cafe in the Noda Arts District. The conversation was awkward at first, old wounds and regrets hanging in the air between them. But as the hours passed, they found themselves laughing about shared memories and discovering the people they had become. They talked about their time at A&T, the parties they had attended, the professors who had shaped them, and the friends they had lost touch with over the years. I've thought about you over the years, Keisha admitted, wrapping her hands around her coffee cup. Wondered if I made the biggest mistake of my life leaving you the way I did. Marcus looked at her thoughtfully, taking in the woman she had become. She was more confident now, more grounded, but there was still a vulnerability in her eyes that reminded him of the girl he had fallen in love with in their sophomore year. At the time, it felt like the end of the world, but looking back, maybe we both needed to grow up a bit. And now? She asked, her eyes meeting his. Now I'm a dad first. Everything else comes second. Zoe depends on me, and I won't do anything that might hurt her. Keisha nodded, understanding completely. I'd like to meet her sometime, your daughter. The coffee date turned into dinner the following weekend at a soul food restaurant in the West End, which led to a movie at the AMC Theater in Concord Mills, and then a hiking trip at Crowder's Mountain where Marcus found himself sharing stories about Zoe and the joys and challenges of single parenthood. He told Keisha about the nights when Zoe would wake up crying for her mother, about learning to braid his daughter's hair after watching countless YouTube tutorials, and about the pride he felt when she brought home her first A on a spelling test. Marcus found himself looking forward to Keisha's texts throughout the day, sharing small moments and silly observations that made him smile. For her part, Keisha started dropping by the construction site in uptown Charlotte where Marcus worked, sometimes in uniform during her patrol, bringing coffee and staying for a few minutes of conversation. The other workers teased him about his cop girlfriend, but he did not mind. It felt good to have someone in his corner again. But beneath the growing connection, Marcus struggled with trust. Late at night, he would think about how devastated he had been when Keisha left him all those years ago. He remembered the weeks he had spent in a fog of depression, barely eating, unable to sleep, wondering what he had done wrong. Could he risk that kind of pain again? Would it be fair to Zoe to bring someone into their lives who might leave? These questions came to a head one evening when Keisha came over for dinner with him and Zoe. They had worked together in the kitchen, their laughter filling the house. Keisha had shown Zoe how to properly season collard greens, a skill passed down from her grandmother, and Marcus had watched them bond over the stove with a warmth spreading through his chest. Zoe had taken to Keisha immediately, fascinated by her police stories and delighted by her attention. After Zoe went to bed, Marcus and Keisha sat on the porch swing, a comfortable silence between them as they watched the stars. The night was warm and humid, the sounds of crickets filling the air. I should tell you something, Keisha said finally, her voice quiet. I've never stopped regretting what I did to you. Marcus turned to look at her profile in the dim porch light. It was a long time ago. Not long enough to forget, she said. I was young and scared and thought I needed to see the world before settling down. I thought there was something bigger out there waiting for me, something I would miss if I married you right out of college. But nothing I found out there compared to what I left behind. Marcus was silent for a long moment, processing her words. He thought about all the years that had passed, all the experiences that had shaped them both. I can't go back to who I was then, he finally said. Too much has happened. Keisha nodded, starting to withdraw emotionally, preparing herself for rejection. But Marcus continued, reaching for her hand. Maybe we could see who we might be now. Take it slow for Zoe's sake. And mine. Keisha's eyes glistened in the moonlight. I'd like that very much. The conversation marked a turning point. Marcus began to let go of old hurts, allowing himself to embrace the possibility of a second chance while still protecting his heart and his daughter. As the weeks passed, Keisha became a more regular presence in their lives. She helped Zoe with her science project about the solar system, teaching her self-defense moves that made the girl giggle with delight, and even attended her school play at Shamrock Gardens Elementary, sitting beside Marcus with genuine pride as Zoe delivered her 2 lines perfectly. For Marcus, watching Keisha with his daughter awakened feelings he had thought long buried. She was patient, kind, and never tried to replace Zoe's mother. Instead, she carved out her own unique relationship with the girl, becoming something between a friend and a mentor. But not everyone was thrilled about their rekindled relationship. Marcus's ex-wife, Tanya, who had moved back to Charlotte after her new relationship fell apart, seemed suddenly interested in spending more time with Zoe and with Marcus. Her timing struck him as suspicious. So you're dating the cop who gave me a speeding ticket last month, Tanya said during one drop-off, her tone deceptively casual. Small world. Marcus raised an eyebrow. Keisha gave you a ticket? She didn't mention it. Tanya's smile was sharp. Interesting. The seed of doubt was planted. That night, Marcus asked Keisha about it. Yes, I gave her a ticket, Keisha admitted without hesitation. She was doing 50 in a school zone near Myers Park. I didn't realize she was your ex until I saw the last name on her license. By then, I had already written the citation. Why didn't you tell me? Keisha looked at him steadily. Because it had nothing to do with you or us. I was doing my job. Her honesty reassured him. But Tanya's interference had just begun. She started calling Marcus for emergencies that often turned out to be minor inconveniences, scheduling last-minute activities with Zoe that conflicted with plans he had made with Keisha, and making comments to Zoe about how temporary relationships could be. The situation came to a head at Zoe's birthday party, held at their house with balloons and streamers decorating the backyard. Marcus had invited Keisha, and Tanya had shown up unannounced, bringing an extravagant gift and monopolizing Zoe's attention. When Keisha offered to leave to avoid tension, Zoe had grabbed her hand. Don't go, the 8-year-old pleaded. I want you here. The simple declaration silenced the adults. Tanya's face tightened, but she said nothing more. After the party, as Marcus and Keisha cleaned up, he found himself watching her with new clarity. I'm sorry about Tanya, he said. She's been difficult lately. Keisha shrugged. She's Zoe's mother. She'll always be part of your life. Yes, but you're becoming part of our lives too, Marcus said quietly, if that's what you want. Keisha set down the garbage bag she was holding and turned to face him fully. What are you asking me, Marcus? He took a deep breath. I'm asking if you're in this for the long haul, because Zoe is getting attached, and so am I. Keisha's eyes filled with tears. I'm not going anywhere. Not this time. Not ever again, if you'll have me. Their relationship deepened after that conversation. Keisha began staying over occasionally after Zoe was asleep. They developed a comfortable routine: Sunday brunches at local spots in the Plaza Midwood neighborhood, movie nights curled up on the couch, weekend hikes at various trails around the Piedmont region. Marcus found himself thinking of them as a family, though he kept these thoughts to himself, not wanting to rush things. 6 months after their rainy roadside reunion, Marcus found himself back at the same stretch of highway, this time deliberately. He had asked Keisha to meet him there after her shift, claiming there was something wrong with his truck. When she pulled up behind him, concern on her face, he was standing by the side of the road with a small bouquet of wildflowers. What's this? she asked, confused but smiling. Your truck looks fine. It is, he admitted. I just wanted to bring you back to where our story restarted. Keisha's expression softened as she accepted the flowers. That's very sweet, but you could have just invited me to dinner like a normal person, instead of making me worry. Marcus laughed, taking her hand and leading her to the exact spot where they had reconnected. Keisha Williams, 10 years ago, I let you walk away because we were young and scared, and thought we had all the time in the world to figure things out. Her breath caught as she realized what was happening. Life took us on different journeys, gave us different loves and losses, but somehow brought us back to the same place. Marcus dropped to one knee, pulling a small box from his pocket. I don't want to waste any more time. Zoe and I both love you. Will you marry me and make our family complete? Tears spilled down Keisha's cheeks as she nodded, unable to speak for a moment. When she found her voice, she said, Yes, 1,000 times. Yes. As they embraced, a car drove past, honking in celebration at the obvious proposal happening on the roadside. They both laughed, holding each other in the same spot where, months earlier, a simple act of kindness had reopened a door they thought had closed forever. The engagement was not without its complications. Tanya's reaction was predictably bitter, and she threatened to seek full custody of Zoe, claiming that Marcus's unstable relationship history made him an unfit parent. The legal battle that followed was ugly and expensive, with Tanya painting Keisha as an interloper trying to replace her in Zoe's life. Through it all, Keisha remained steady, never speaking ill of Tanya in front of Zoe and encouraging Marcus to take the high road. Her patience was rewarded when the judge ruled in Marcus's favor, maintaining the existing custody arrangement but adding a stipulation that all parties should attend family counseling. The counseling sessions were tense at first, but gradually a fragile peace emerged. Tanya began dating someone new, which seemed to soften her antagonism toward Marcus and Keisha. Zoe, who had been caught in the middle, visibly relaxed as the adults in her life learned to coexist. Their wedding was small and meaningful, held in Marcus's backyard the following spring. Zoe served as both flower girl and best daughter, proudly walking down the aisle ahead of Keisha in a beautiful lavender dress that she had picked out herself. During the ceremony, they included a special moment where all three of them poured different colored sands into a single container, symbolizing their blended family. Even Tanya attended, sitting quietly at the back with her new boyfriend. After the ceremony, she approached the newlyweds with a stiff smile. Congratulations, she said, the words sounding only slightly forced. Zoe looks happy. Thank you for coming, Keisha replied sincerely. It means a lot to her. And to us, Marcus added. Tanya nodded, then added in a lower voice to Keisha, Take care of them. I will, Keisha promised. Always. The first year of marriage brought its own challenges. Keisha was promoted to detective, which meant longer, less predictable hours. Marcus's construction company landed a major contract that required frequent travel to Raleigh. They juggled schedules, childcare arrangements, and household responsibilities with varying degrees of success. Their first major fight came when Keisha missed Zoe's school concert because of a case. Marcus, exhausted from single-handedly managing everything in her absence, lashed out when she finally came home. This is exactly what I was afraid of, he said, the words sharp with disappointment. Zoe counting on someone who isn't there. Keisha recoiled as if he had slapped her. That's not fair, I'm not Tanya. Didn't you choose to miss it? Marcus challenged. You could have asked your partner to cover. My partner has 3 kids of his own, Keisha shot back. And this was a missing child case, Marcus. What would you have had me do? The argument continued until they were both too exhausted to keep fighting. They went to bed angry, backs turned to each other, the silence between them heavy with unspoken fears. The next morning, Marcus woke to find Keisha's side of the bed empty. He found her in the kitchen making pancakes with Zoe, both of them still in pajamas. The scene was so domestic, so normal, that for a moment he thought he had dreamed the fight. "Morning, Dad," Zoe chirped. "Keisha's teaching me how to flip pancakes without making a mess." Keisha met his eyes over their daughter's head. "We saved some batter for you," she said quietly, "if you want to try." It was an olive branch, and Marcus took it gratefully. Later, after Zoe left for school, they talked, really talked about their expectations, fears, and the inevitable compromises of building a life together. "I'm not perfect," Keisha admitted. "I'm going to mess up sometimes. But I need you to believe that I'm trying my best, that I'm not going to walk away when things get hard." Marcus nodded, taking her hands in his. "And I need to stop comparing you to Tanya or to the idealized version of you I've carried all these years. You're your own person, and that's who I fell in love with." They emerged from that fight stronger, with a deeper understanding of each other's triggers and insecurities. They established new routines and backup plans, learned to communicate more clearly about their needs, and made a conscious effort to prioritize their relationship alongside their other responsibilities. 2 years into their marriage, they decided to try for a baby. The decision was not made lightly. Zoe was now 10, and they worried about how she would adjust to no longer being an only child. They included her in the conversation, asking for her thoughts and addressing her concerns. "Would I still be special?" she asked, her voice small. "You will always be special," Marcus assured her. "Having another child wouldn't change how much we love you." "And you'd be the best big sister ever," Keisha added. "Any baby would be lucky to have you." Zoe considered this, then nodded solemnly. "Okay, but I get to help pick the name." They laughed, relieved by her acceptance, not realizing that the journey to expanding their family would be more difficult than anticipated. Month after month, Keisha's period arrived with disappointing regularity. Medical tests revealed nothing obviously wrong, just the nebulous diagnosis of unexplained infertility. The emotional toll was heavy, especially on Keisha, who could not help feeling that her body was failing them. Marcus tried to be supportive, but he did not always know what to say or do. The strain began to show in their relationship again, the joy of trying for a baby replaced by the clinical precision of ovulation tracking and scheduled intimacy. After a year of trying, they decided to take a break from actively pursuing pregnancy. They needed to remember why they wanted a child together in the first place, because they loved each other, not because something was missing from their family. It was during this break, when they had stopped trying so hard, that Keisha discovered she was pregnant. The news came on an ordinary Tuesday morning, delivered through tears of disbelief and joy as she showed Marcus the positive test. The pregnancy brought its own challenges. Keisha experienced severe morning sickness that lasted well into her second trimester. Marcus worried constantly, especially when her blood pressure began to rise in the later months. Zoe, now 11, vacillated between excitement about becoming a big sister and anxiety about how a baby would change their family dynamic. Through it all, they leaned on each other, finding strength in the bond they had rebuilt. When complications arose in Keisha's 8th month, requiring her to be on bed rest, Marcus rearranged his work schedule to be home more. Zoe stepped up too, bringing Keisha books and keeping her company after school. Their son, Jalen, was born on a clear spring morning after a difficult but ultimately successful delivery. As Marcus held his newborn son while Keisha rested, Zoe peered at her baby brother with wonder. "He's so tiny," she whispered, "but his hands are just like Dad's." 5 years after that rainy day on the highway, their family had found its rhythm. Keisha had returned to the force part-time, balancing her career with family life. Marcus's construction business had grown, allowing him more flexibility to be present for school events and family dinners. Zoe had blossomed into a confident teenager who doted on her little brother and had developed a special bond with Keisha that was entirely their own. One evening, as they sat on that same porch swing watching Zoe teach little Jalen how to catch fireflies in the yard, Keisha leaned her head on Marcus's shoulder. "Do you ever think about how different our lives would be if your truck had just driven past me that day?" she asked. Marcus kissed the top of her head. "I couldn't have driven past. It's not who I am." "That's why I love you," she said simply. "Because you're the kind of man who stops to help, even in a storm." As the fireflies danced around their children in the gathering dusk, Marcus reflected on the unexpected journey that had brought them here, from heartbroken exes to a complete family. From a chance encounter in the rain to a love that felt both brand new and decades old. Sometimes the greatest love stories are not about finding someone new, but rediscovering someone who was meant to be yours all along. Sometimes the detours in life lead us exactly where we were always meant to go. Marcus thought about the young man he had been when he first met Keisha at that freshman mixer at North Carolina A&T, nervous and unsure of himself, trying to work up the courage to talk to the most beautiful woman in the room. He remembered how she had laughed at his terrible jokes, how she had seen something in him that he did not yet see in himself. He thought about the pain of losing her, the years of wondering what if, and the unexpected grace of getting a second chance. He looked at his wife, at the gray strands beginning to appear in her braids, at the laugh lines around her eyes, and he loved her more than he ever had before. Not despite the time they had spent apart, but because of it. They had both needed to grow, to become the people who could build a life together, to learn the lessons that would make their love stronger the second time around. Jalen came running toward them, fireflies blinking in the jar Zoe had given him. "Daddy, look!" he shouted, his face bright with wonder. "I caught so many." "You sure did," Marcus said, lifting his son onto his lap. "Good job, little man." Keisha wrapped her arm around them both, and for a moment, time seemed to stand still. The past and the present merged into a single perfect moment, a family complete, a love reclaimed, a future full of promise. Later that night, after the children were in bed, Marcus and Keisha stood in the kitchen doing the dishes together. It was an ordinary moment, unremarkable in every way, but to Marcus it felt sacred. This was what he had wanted all those years ago when he had proposed to Keisha the first time, this simple domesticity, this partnership, this sense of being exactly where he belonged. "Do you have any regrets?" he asked suddenly. Keisha paused, a wet plate in her hands. "About what?" "About leaving. About the years we spent apart." She was quiet for a long moment. "I used to," she finally said. "I used to lie awake at night in Atlanta, wondering what my life would have been like if I had stayed. If I had married you when I was 22. But now, I don't think I do. No? If I hadn't left, I wouldn't have become the person I am now. And neither would you. We needed those years apart, Marcus. We needed to make our own mistakes, learn our own lessons. I needed to chase a dream that wasn't right for me so I could find one that was. And you needed to be with Tanya so that Zoe could exist." Marcus had never thought about it that way before. The years with Tanya had been painful, especially the ending, but they had also given him his daughter. Without that marriage, there would be no Zoe, no Sunday morning pancakes, no proud father watching his little girl become a young woman. "I guess you're right," he said slowly. "Everything happened the way it needed to." "And now we're here," Keisha said, putting down the plate and taking his hands. "Together, with 2 beautiful children and a life we built with our own hands. I wouldn't trade that for anything." Marcus pulled her close, breathing in the familiar scent of her shea butter lotion, feeling the strength in her arms as she held him. They had been through so much, separately and together, and they had come out the other side stronger for it. Outside, the summer night hummed with the sounds of crickets and distant traffic. Somewhere down the street, a dog barked. The world went on, ordinary and unremarkable, and at the center of it, Marcus Washington held his wife and thanked God for rainstorms and dead batteries and second chances. The years continued to pass, bringing their own joys and sorrows. Zoe graduated from high school and went off to college at Spelman, following in her father's footsteps at an HBCU. Jalen grew into a curious, energetic boy who wanted to be a firefighter one week and an astronaut the next. Marcus's construction company continued to thrive, and Keisha eventually made lieutenant, a promotion she had worked toward for years. There were challenges, of course. There always are. Marcus's mother passed away, and the grief hit him harder than he expected. Keisha's father was diagnosed with dementia, and they spent months navigating the difficult decisions that came with caring for an aging parent. Zoe went through a rebellious phase in college that tested everyone's patience. Jalen struggled with reading and needed extra help at school, but through it all, their love remained constant. Not perfect, not always easy, but real and enduring. They had learned how to fight fair and how to forgive. They had learned how to give each other space and how to come back together. They had learned that love was not just a feeling, but a choice, one they made again and again, every single day. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Marcus planned a special surprise. He told Keisha they were going out to dinner, but instead drove them to the same stretch of highway where their story had restarted. She laughed when she realized where they were, tears streaming down her face as she remembered that rainy night so many years ago. "You're ridiculous," she said, but she was smiling. "You love it," he replied. They stood together by the side of the road, traffic rushing past, and Marcus took her hands in his. 10 years ago, I promised to love you for the rest of my life, and I've kept that promise. But today, I want to make it again. I choose you, Keisha Williams Washington, today, tomorrow, and every day after that, for as long as I live. Keisha was crying too hard to speak, so she just kissed him, a kiss that held all the love and gratitude and joy that words could never fully express. Sometimes the greatest love stories are not about finding someone new, but rediscovering someone who was meant to be yours all along. Sometimes the detours in life lead us exactly where we were always meant to go. And sometimes, if we are very lucky, we get a second chance at the love we thought we had lost forever. Remember that kindness, even something as simple as stopping to help a stranger, can change not only their life, but yours as well. Sometimes the most beautiful beginnings are waiting just on the other side of a storm.